Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. 888-589-8840 is the number to call if you'd like to join the conversation today. 888-589-8840. Talking with Stephen Meyer from the Discovery Institute in the last segment about higher education. And you have the same exact problems at lower levels of education. Right now, there's a huge controversy in the entire country over Common Core. We've talked about this problem before. I mean, my basic problem with Common Core is this is the federal government trying to dictate education policy to local school districts. We should keep the federal government completely out of the education issue. This is something that ought to be done by local folks. We ought to keep the decision makers as local as we possibly can, so the people that have to live with the decisions of decision makers are in that community. They've got some kind of recourse. If you are in a school district in Eastern Oregon, you have no recourse if somebody in Washington, D.C. in a cubicle is dictating curriculum policy to your school. You got no recourse. But if curriculum is established by your local school board and you don't like it, you've got a place to go. Now, this Common Core curriculum has been adopted by states, but it's really a government-centric thing, a federal government-centric thing, and they're trying to establish uniform standards all over the country. And we've talked about the fact that these math standards, these reading standards are just horribly low. I mean, the advocates for Common Core have already admitted that their math standards, if you meet their math standards, it wouldn't be high enough for you to get into an institution of higher learning. You would not know enough if you satisfied the standards of Common Core to get into college. They've admitted this. So this is obviously just a dismal thing. But, and we talked about the problems with the math problems. I played that soundbite of that Common Core instructor saying, look, if a kid said 3 times 4 was 11, we're not going to tell him he's wrong. If he can tell us how he got to that answer, we're going to give him credit for telling us how he came up with 3 times 4 equals 11. And if it's convincing enough, if it's persuasive enough, we're going to give him credit for that answer. That is just how abysmal the standards are in Common Core. But it's even worse than that. It's the brainwashing, the kind that Stephen Meyer was talking about, happens at the college level, where alternate points of view are not even considered. 95% of the colleges, according to FIRE, F-I-R-E, it's an organization that studies First Amendment rights on college campuses, 95 to 96% of college campuses do not have any genuine respect for free speech or freedom of inquiry. Now, here is a clip from a scholar who's been studying Common Core, came across a segment on the classic book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and says, look, in Common Core, the students don't even read the book. The students don't even read the book Frankenstein. They read excerpts from articles about the book, and then the teacher is instructed with the kind of use that the teacher is to make of not the book itself, but the stuff that they've read that people have said about the book. Let's listen.
What else are you finding as you look at curriculum or textbooks about Common Core that you talk about in your book?
Well, when you think students are actually reading things in their curriculum, it turns out that they're not reading anything close to what it says they're reading on paper. So, for example, take the novel Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is a great classic. We all know it just because it's a part of our culture. But if you look at what actually goes on with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in a school, it's frightening. It's monstrous. What they do is they give you about 3 or 4 pages of Mary Shelley, not a selection from Frankenstein, but just writing about Frankenstein. And then you'll have 4 or 5 pages of a modern author talking about frightening stories that she heard as a child that have no relation to Frankenstein. You might see a picture from a 1950s movie of a Frankenstein monster.
And then he goes on to say, and what the teacher is instructed to do, one of the lessons that the teacher is instructed to draw from the book is that all right-wing groups are fascist. So they're the elementary or the whatever level this is, probably middle school or high school, the teacher's instructed to tell the students that what we learn from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is that right-wing groups like the Tea Party, like pro-life groups, like pro-family groups, that they are all a bunch of fascists. So it's just a part of the brainwashing that takes place. Now, one other soundbite before we go to the phones, 888-589-8840. This is clip number 8, Rob. We've talked some about Chris Christie, the trouble that he's in. I had a long conversation with a Republican strategist this morning who lives and works in New Jersey. Might have him on the program to talk about that scandal and what's going to happen with Chris Christie. Even the big money guys in the Republican Party are distancing themselves from Chris Christie over this thing. I talked about it on Friday. Things are so bad with the GOP elites that they're actually thinking about bringing back Mitt Romney. So that's how desperate they are to find a candidate, because they think that Chris Christie's probably going to be disabled by all of the scandals surrounding Bridgegate. The mayor of Hoboken, New Jersey's out there saying, hey, I couldn't get permission, or I couldn't get money for Sandy relief until I decided to support a development project that the governor wanted to move forward because it would benefit a friend of his. So it's extortion, blackmail, bribery, all that kind of stuff. All that is swirling in the mix. How much of it's true? I don't even know whether Chris Christie knew about the bridge, the lanes closing or not. I don't know. It seems to me highly unlikely that he didn't. My friend said, look, he's got a reputation as a hands-on manager, a micromanager. So the chances he didn't know about it probably pretty slim. But somebody else who's got some electoral problems is Hillary Clinton. Now, she is the front runner for the Democrats, and they're kind of in a panic. They're afraid that some of these revelations about Benghazi, where clearly the State Department is blamed by the Senate committee, bipartisan committee, Democrats on that committee as well as Republicans, laying the blame for what happened in Benghazi on the State Department. Requests were made for beefed up security. The State Department didn't respond. Well, who's the State Department? That's Hillary Clinton. So that's in her portfolio. The fault for that would be placed squarely at her feet. And so they're concerned that this is going to hurt her in 2016. Now, here is Nia Malika Henderson from the Washington Post. And the question comes up is what are her qualifications to become the president of the United States, and what accomplishments did she have as Secretary of State that look good on her presidential resume? Here is Nia Malika Henderson of the Washington Post now, card-carrying leftist, and her response.
I think it does get to what Hillary Clinton actually did as Secretary of State, right? Does she have a sort of counter narrative about, what's her biggest accomplishment as Secretary of State? Right. We don't really know that. And at this point, Benghazi is standing in for her term as Secretary of State.
That's amazing to me, because the only thing everybody says, she's the greatest Secretary of State we've ever had. Boy, did she knock it out of the park. And here's somebody from the Washington Post. All right, what is her biggest accomplishment? We don't know. We don't have any idea. What did she accomplish? I can't think of anything that she accomplished. This is somebody that's in her corner, card-carrying left-winger. Can't think of one single solitary thing in Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State that would represent an accomplishment. So I think she's got problems for 2016, just like Chris Christie. By the way, in Arkansas, a Republican, this is a Democratic district in Arkansas. It has not been represented by a Republican since Reconstruction. That's 140 years ago was the last time a Republican represented this district in Arkansas. They just had a special election because a legislator had to resign. The Republican won 57-43. The Republican in a Democrat district won 57-43. So that, I think, is an ominous sign for Democrats when you look ahead to November of 2014. There could be a tidal wave, a tsunami that could sweep a historic number of Democrats out of office in November. 888-589-8840. Let's begin by going to Angie, Waco, Texas. Angie, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Go right ahead.
Okay. I was wondering, it seems to me there's just like a common thread with everything you're bringing up, and that is that that people through the educational system, the media, they're being dumbed down, and I think that like the main thing is that these people that are doing this, they hate God and they hate their image of God. Like I've talked to people that are pro-choice, that have been pro-choice for many years, older people, and they kind of have a utilitarian, consumerist attitude towards, the unborn, and then people that are a little bit older tend to be more, like especially the women seem to see the uterus, as a prison,
Mm-hmm.
And that they're being held hostage by a growing child, or like it's a parasite or a leak or something.
Yeah.
And then anybody born after Roe v. Wade, and especially whose parents are pro-abortion, it's like they have a death threat, an unspoken death threat from the person they're supposed to be safest with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a Stockholm syndrome in general for all these people in the general public.
Yeah.
And, but the whole thing is to eradicate the image of God in every way so that people can do what they know is sinful and have some of an excuse for it, in my opinion.
All right. Well, that's a very insightful phone call, Angie. And, that really ultimately, Angie's exactly right. What abortion is about ultimately is effacing the image of God. Now, Satan is clearly behind the abortion industry. It's dark, it's sinister, it's bloody. It involves the shedding of completely innocent blood. Got Satan's fingerprints all over it. So Satan is behind the abortion industry. He's behind the slaughter of 56 million innocents. Why would Satan be in favor of abortion? Why does he support it? Why does he promote it? Why does he deceive people into thinking that it's good? Well, it's because he hates human beings. He hates babies. Why does he hate human beings? Why does he hate babies? For the simple reason that we are made in the image of God. Every baby, every human being is in the image of God. Every human being, therefore, every baby reminds him of his enemy, God himself. He hates God. He hates people that resemble God. He hates people that are like God. He hates people that have been created in the image of God. Therefore, he seeks to destroy them in the womb and outside. Back in 2.